Welcome back, everyone, and thank you again to Oatly and Morningstar Farms for sponsoring this break. I hope that some of you got a chance to try out that frozen dessert and the chorizo taco. For our next session, Scott Giambastiani and Bill Billenstein are joining me to talk about that most humble, classic, tried and true, all-in-one meal in your hand, the sandwich. Scott is the Food at Google Program Manager, and Bill is Senior Director of Culinary and Nutrition Strategy for Guckenheimer. Hi, Scott. Hi, Bill.
Hey, Jackie. How are you?
Hi, Jackie. Hey, everyone.
Hey. So we are going to turn it over to you guys to talk about some cool sandwiches that Bill has been working on.
Thank you so much. It's great to be on a virtual stage with Chef Bill. Bill and I worked together for many years back in the Google world. Bill, it's great to see you virtually. I like the beard. Nice job.
Thank you. This is my quarantine beard, my rally beard to get out of quarantine maybe, but great to see you too. It's been a while, Scott.
It has. So for those that don't know Bill as well as I do, he's the Senior Director of Culinary and Nutrition Strategy for Guckenheimer, based in San Mateo, California. And Bill, in your recipes today, I've looked over the recipes and they're quite intriguing because you've got a lot of really interesting dimensions, which obviously you're going to speak to. But as we have this conversation and look over your video in a second, I'm interested if you could kind of layer in a couple things that are really unique to our environment specifically. One would be large volume and how you can adapt these sandwiches for larger volume, as well as the fact that we're heading out of this hopefully soon post-COVID era, and how these sandwiches can be in a presented or served style versus a grab and go, and the flexibility in that. So love to have you roll your videos and introduce the sandwiches for the guests.
Yeah, I think that's a great call. And, in this environment we're doing today, we do see the increased need for grab and go. We do see the increased need for sandwiches and actually these boxed lunches. But first one we've got is a celery root Reuben with a fancy pastrami sauce. You're going to combine the brine. You're going to submerge that for 16 hours. And two things unique to this brine are coffee grounds and beet juice. So when the celery root comes out of the brine, it's roasted in the oven for about 15 minutes. And then we put some of the pastrami seasoning and spices back on there. A really fun aspect to this sandwich is the spread, right? A great spread. And this one actually has pastrami in it. It's a great utilization for scraps, things, those pieces that you can't slice, the things that fall off the deli slicer. And from there, we're just really retherming, right? So putting the kraut on, we're melting some Swiss. We've got our spread. We've got our crispy rye bread. And so again, for grab and go applications, we can chill that down and put this sandwich together and it holds really, really well. But to do this a la menu, and what we're doing to make it for guests these days is to really do that retherming and building the sandwich for them, right? Taking a lot of the guesswork out. And so, to me, this eats like a pastrami sandwich. We definitely have the flavor there. We've got layers of texture and some beautiful colors.
This is not doing it justice looking it on the screen, but you really hit on some of the core elements, which is when we're focusing on plant forward being more craveable than the alternative, you're putting this up against a Reuben. The Reuben is one of the master sandwiches out there. What led you to go down the path of celery root as kind of the filler for this? And what was your inspiration to really deliver on something that has a high standard as a sandwich, to deliver it in a plant forward way, which looks just amazing?
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. And to me, it's all about, anybody that knows me, it's, anybody could grab an analog deli meat and put that in there. But to me, it's really the flavor transfer, and it's really that experience and that craveability. So the flavors have to be on point. The textures have to be on point. And what led me to celery root was we were doing this with eggplant, and I was looking for something, now that celery root's coming back around in the Bay Area, something that we could play with that, again, would absorb flavors, but not overpower. And I did this very first time for this conference. So I was surprised. I was a little worried that the celery root was going to overpower, but it picks up the flavors of the brine. Again, it picks up that pastrami seasoning flavor. You get a hint of celery root at the end of the day. You don't want to overbrine it. So it's almost like there was celery salt in there. And, I'm always looking for something that's going to have a nice mouthfeel and texture, but again, is going to take the flavors, because we want to try to recreate that entire experience, not just mimic a piece of pastrami.
Yeah, I love how you hit on textures. It's one of those things that within plant forward, and even some of the plant-based meats that are coming out, texture always seems to be one of those key concerns. It's hard to mimic meat. And just looking at the pictures here, looking through, I think there was 8 or 9 different recipes that accompany your total 2 dishes. You really put a lot of thought into how you can deliver the satiety, the expectations of a traditional sandwich, but done in a plant-forward way. Kudos to you. Can't wait to dig into it and try it out.
Yeah, I hope everybody gets a chance to try it out.
So you've got another recipe on a totally different tangent. You want to go into the next one? Give us a little overview, and again, inspiration, anything around large volume that you can kind of aid to on how we can kind of get these done and for larger environments. Super helpful to hear.
Yeah, so the second one, we've got a cauliflower banh mi with walnut and mushroom pesto or pate on there. And so I used to do this pate. We see the ingredients here and we'll roll. So I used to do this pate with a lot of mushrooms and a ton of cream, and it was really, really unctuous. But doing some research and seeing what others were doing, we lightened it up quite a bit by using the walnuts, but also cannellini beans. So you really want to sweat your onions, your aromatics, your garlic out till they're translucent. We're going to add the mushrooms here and try to cook out as much as the moisture as possible. Started to use portobello's because a little of it retains and it will help blend and get a smoother pate. But you want to cook it pretty dry. If your pate is coming out really, really dry, you can add a little bit of water. You can also just not take the mushrooms down quite far. So the big important ingredient here is the walnuts, and they're not toasted at all. They're raw so that we've got a little bit of moisture content left in them. And then we add the beans. A lot of people will use, we were using soy, we're using sesame to try to keep it in that Asian flavor profile. But something I like a lot is just a hit of balsamic vinegar in there. It adds a bit of earthiness to it. It helps blend with the color. But, again, this and the other sandwiches, when you taste these things on their own, they're going to hit very, very high. They got very, very high notes. But when we're combining them together, like you see here, they've all got to stand up on their own enough to be able to be recognized within that sandwich. So we've got a nice rice flour baguette. We've got the pate. We've got a lemon aioli. The main filler on this one instead of pork is roasted cauliflower. Nice hearty vegetable, again, pretty neutral flavor. And then we've got our pickled daikon, carrots, cucumber, jalapeno, cilantro. And that's really our take on that traditional banh mi sandwich. Again, it's mimicking those flavors. And you talked about the high volume. So, both of these dishes, yes, they have a lot of recipes, but there's a lot of recipes because there's the components that can be done ahead of time. So We're looking at spreads, relishes, and we're looking at utilization, right? You've got pickling liquid around. We're pickling a lot of these same ingredients. We have them raw on our health bars or salad stations. So we're able to put them in the pickle liquid. We're able to use pickles and relishes to create the spreads, and they'll hold for several days. So like I said, you can do this a la minute at the station, or this one holds really, really well for, we're seeing a lot of bagged lunches right now, to-go lunches, care packages. And it's something a little bit different than your normal ham and cheese, your Swiss, very plant forward, but hits on all those flavor profiles.
Well, it's great that you've offered the background on why you provided the additional recipes. The way of this, compound cooking is super interesting because you've got now many different recipes you can use for other items. That's a great little bonus. One thing I'm always interested to hear, and it's hard to do this justice in a virtual format, so maybe talk it through a little bit, is where would you introduce, if you were serving this versus being a grab and go, where would you introduce contrast in maybe temperature or things that you can't do if it's just going to be in a grab and go setting? And the reason I mention that is most sandwiches are fairly versatile, but there's a lot of art and thought put behind your recipe. I can see this. And so any tips you'd want to share if this was served outside of a grab and go area? Would you do anything different to the sandwich or the previous one?
Yeah, the only thing different is really the, what I'll call the innards of the sandwich. And it's in the recipes for everybody, either to chill it down or to serve it hot. But, that Reuben, we get those all staged, ready to go with the cheese on there if it's a quick pickup. And that's actually grilling as you're preparing the rest of the sandwich and putting the spread on there. You can have some guest interaction. So then you've got a difference in those temperatures and a difference in those textures. It'll hold that temp for quite a while. Same thing with that banh mi, right? Obviously you want the warm, crispy bread, but we'd have the cauliflower filling to be very, very warm, right? And held, and a lot of that can be finished right on the grill or the griddle in front of the guest. And then you've got the cold contrast and the textures of the pickles that are in there. So it works great in both applications. And if you think, in an event or catering mindset, we're doing a lot of finishing of these at the stations, but you want to be able to show that to the guests as well. And you're still crafting it for them.
Right. Love it. These are great tips. Chef Bill, great to see you again. Thank you so much for walking us through the recipes. It's good to see you. We'll see you again soon virtually. Yeah,
great to see you. I hope everybody gets a chance to try these. Thanks.
Absolutely. And now I'd like to introduce Chef Rich Landau from Vedge Restaurant in Philadelphia. He's going to be showcasing his video on his special sandwich, and I'll let him describe that next.
Hi everyone, I'm Rich Landau from Vedge Restaurant in Philadelphia. Today I'm going to show you how to make a great sandwich. It's an Argentine sausage sandwich, but we're going to do it all plant-based here. We're going to make a carrot churro pan. So the most basic version is really just a sausage in a roll, just like our hot dog. You want to make sure these are super, super fresh. You're not going to peel them. We want that skin on there, and I'm going to show you why once they come out of the oven. Okay, these go on a roasting sheet. We're going to build our roasting marinade right on the baking sheet. Here we have our Latin spice blend. You can buy this, you can make it. I've got a recipe for you. These are all the usual suspects: cumin, coriander, dried garlic, dried oregano, dried thyme, dried onion, a little bit of cayenne for heat. We're also going to put on our Nutra oil. I like sunflower oil. Use whatever Nutra oil you like. Considering that you have a lot of spices in here mingling, the last thing you want it to do is be one-dimensional. This is a touch of vinegar. A nice neutral vinegar is good. Rice wine, apple cider, white vinegar is fine. Anything that's just not too rich and flavorful. Here's another ingredient that maybe you wouldn't expect to see in something South American. It's tamari, which is, of course, a Japanese soy sauce. Now, we use a little bit of tamari in our cooking. If you use too much, it's going to taste Asian. If you use just a little bit, you're enhancing everything else that comes with it, and you're going to get a much more full effect from all the spices you're using. These go into the oven, and we're going to take out the ones that I had in there earlier. Look at these. Now, these went for a while. These went for about 20 minutes or so. Look at that beautiful caramelized flavor. Look at how that tamari just helped all those flavors caramelize on there. We use the carrot's natural sugars. Isn't that beautiful? Look at that. Now, here's the way you check. See how it gives like that? Then you know it's tender and ready to eat. You don't want it to be mush. That's baby food. You want it to have just a little bit of al dente bite to it. Now, let's talk about our chimichurri over here. Cilantro, rough chopped. Parsley, rough chopped. Little bit of garlic. I've got 2 little baby garlic cloves here. It's really all you need because garlic tends to dominate this. Lots of chopped white onion. Chili flake. Got to remember, there's a lot of Italian influence in Argentine food. So we're going to use that little bit of Italian chili flake there. Salt and freshly ground pepper. For our liquids, what we're going to do is add some lime juice. That goes right in. Oh, that's a good lime. Lots of lime juice. Now, I know we're using lime juice as our acid, but we want to stay true to the original. So we'll use a little bit of vinegar as well, a little bit of white vinegar, and just a little bit of our Nutra oil. Okay, just a little bit, not too much. This is a little bit of vegan mayonnaise. I like this for the richness. I think this adds a nice kind of blanket of fat in here to carry all these high notes that we're going to put in. Put in some beautiful sliced tomato. Then we are going to lay one of our carrots in here. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? You can see already our chimichurri is starting to get very liquidy. The salt is going to work on those onions, and we're going to put this right on top. This is looking awesome. I like a little bit of thinly sliced red onion dancing around the top there. A little bit of fresh cabbage. You can use lettuce. You can make coleslaw. And I like some pickled hot peppers on mine. And there you have your churro pan, carrot churro pan, a take on an Argentine sandwich. Absolutely beautiful.
What a delicious looking sandwich. Hello, Rich.
Hey, that looks pretty good. I'm getting hungry.
Yeah. The chef that was making it looked pretty good too. Looked pretty relaxed.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for being with us, Rich. I wonder, your video was fairly comprehensive, but I just have to say also that I was selfishly really excited that you were going to do the choripan. I went to Argentina for the first time last year, for my honeymoon, and choripans are all over on
Everywhere,
the streets, everywhere in Buenos Aires. Such a standard kind of sandwich, the sausage, the grilled sausage, the chimichurri, but you really kind of broke it down in terms of, finding the flavors that make it a choripan, just without that meat-based sausage in there.
Absolutely. I mean, our first restaurant, Vedge, was very vegetable forward. We were basically taking a vegetable and saying, what can we do with this? What can we, how can we reimagine putting vegetables in the center of the plate where they belong? But when we opened up V Street, we became very kind of theme-driven, ethnically driven, spice-driven, flavor-driven. Not to say the vegetables were, second fiddle there, but it was the theme around the spices, taking something that was this kind of something from somewhere in the world that was just celebrated and beloved, and just saying, well, wait a second, it doesn't have to have meat in it. Maybe we can rethink this and kind of reimagine it for a new audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And you've got today for us, we saw the choripan going down to South America. You've also got something very American for us in front of you, right?
Now, you're lucky there's not a bite taken out of this, because this is the real deal. Now, this is our mushroom BLT. This is so simple, it's just crazy. Excuse me. There are maitake mushrooms in there. You can use shiitakes, portobellos, trumpets work great in this. The idea behind this is that, what is a BLT? Which everybody loves, even if you're a vegetarian or vegan. The idea of a BLT is amazing, and that's what we ran with. And we're like, well, wait a second, you've got, what's a star in there? It's something crispy and smoky. It doesn't have to be bacon. I mean, we're not just thinking outside the box, we're building a new box here. We're rethinking what goes into our food. Vegan mayonnaise tastes just as good as real mayonnaise, if you ask me. If I ate everything, I'd probably still eat vegan mayonnaise because it's delicious. And the idea that the mushrooms are just crisped in a pan. Now, there's a lot of ways you can do it. You can put them over a little bit of a smoker. You can put a smoker gun on it. I just used a little bit of smoked paprika, and it did the trick beautifully. But the trick was getting them really crispy. And when you eat this, I mean, honestly, you're not giving up a whole ton of flavor, texture, satisfaction just because there's no meat in it. And that is everything that we've always strived for, showing people that food is about flavor. It's not about flesh. You can do. Now, I mean, listen, if you want a big steak dinner, there's not a lot I can do for you. But if you want something like a BLT or a choripan or anything like that, it's okay to rethink it. And that's where it all starts for us.
Yeah, and I love that philosophy we heard earlier from Amanda Topper talking about, these consumers who are looking to increase plant-based or plant-forward, fewer animal protein in their diets. And the way that they are looking for that in familiar forms. So, introducing something very familiar to them, like a burger or like a BLT sandwich, something that they're used to, they understand sort of what the kind of experience should be, but just sort of giving them a little twist on that. It sounds like that's what you've been doing as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what's that saying? Familiarity breeds contempt. Or maybe it's contempt. I don't know. But, they say,
after coronavirus, familiarity does
right,
with everybody in tight quarters, right?
It's another story. I mean, to me, it is, there's a lot of circles in, the vegan and plant-based world that kind of denounce the fake meats or the mock meats. I don't have a problem with them. We don't serve them at the restaurant. They're not chefy enough for us, if I could be a snob for a second. But I eat them. I ate a Beyond Burger for lunch yesterday. I think they're absolutely fantastic. I also grew up on this stuff. I grew up on burgers and club sandwiches and meatball subs, BLTs. This was my life. And I gave up meat only for ethical reasons. I still crave all those flavors. So for me, I'm like, I'm going to find any way I can to have a BLT and to have that meatball parm and to have a burger. And if it's when I want a burger, I eat a Beyond Burger. If I want to do something a little bit more from the garden, I might do a portobello mushroom sandwich or like a seared cauliflower sandwich or something like that. there's no rules to this, is what it comes down to. It's really about trying to just change people's preconceived notions of what plant-based food is, and I think that's been our biggest challenge. 10 years ago, it was all about apologizing and excusing and saying, hey, let me load up your plate with a pound of food because there's no meat on it. Nowadays, people are very accepting of it. And it's really changed drastically.
Yeah. We've got just a minute left here, but I wonder if you can also speak to specifically sandwiches and your operation and sort of whether that's changed as well in the current crisis and the model for your restaurant. Where do sandwiches kind of fit in for you in terms of innovation and R&D and what your guests are looking for?
Well, I think sandwiches are one of the easiest go-to items that you can transition people to for something more plant forward. I mean, at lunch, the last thing I remember when I was younger and I would eat a cheesesteak for lunch, and you needed a nap right after that. Remember, we're in Philly, so cheesesteak, we use that very, very loosely here. I think sandwiches are the best way to introduce people into these kind of this new way of thinking, because it's something lighter. It's something that they're going to feel good about eating at 3 o'clock when they're starting to hit that slump. It's all about the flavor. And once you put something in between bread or on a roll, you have a lot of forgiveness, a lot of room to play with. And I think you're going to see a lot. That's going to be the first stage of really the whole next wave of plant forward eating. It's going to come down to sandwiches. So I'm a huge fan.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rich. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but Rich is going to be sticking around to sign copies of his book over in the expo session during the next reception. So if you do have other questions for him, if you want to see how far he's gotten into the mushroom BLT by that time, hop on over to the expo session and say hi to Rich. So we'll see you over there in a little bit, Rich.
See you all there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And another thank you also to Scott Giambastiani and to Bill Billenstein. A reminder that all of the videos that you've seen, as well as the recipes that went along with those videos and those demos, are available on our website. Let's see, before we jump into our next session, let's take a quick look at our poll results. It looks like most people's primary objective, very in line with what Amanda was telling us. Most people's primary objective in increasing plant-forward options on their menu is to increase choice for flexitarian customers looking to eat less animal-based protein. Very interesting. I think that's really in line with those business insights and those consumer insights that we're hearing from Amanda. Now, for our next session, we're going to stay in the kitchen, in a manner of speaking, but this time we're looking at the people who populate those kitchens and best practices in taking care of your teams, particularly during the unprecedented challenges currently faced by the food service industry. Here to moderate the session is Einav Gefen, who is Corporate Executive Chef at Unilever Food Solutions. And we're so grateful to Unilever Food Solutions for supporting our virtual series as a premium gold sponsor, and for bringing this great panel of industry leaders together to discuss this really vital topic. Thanks for joining us, Einav.
Thank you for having me, Jackie.
I will let you dive into the conversation with our great panelists, and I think you've got a video also, right?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So, hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us on week 3. We wanted to take the conversation, though it's hard after sandwiches, a little bit from the plant-forward ingredients and plates, and a little bit about sustainability and the well-being of our teams. If you've heard about Fur Kitchens before, it's a social mission to make the industry a little bit better, the cultural, back of house, front of house, more sustainable and a healthier environment. And needless to say that in the current crisis we're in, this is even much more acute topic. I have a great panel joining me today, so I'm very excited. But before I'm going to bring them on stage, let's kick off with a little video.
You're in this business because you love to serve great food and memorable experiences. But lately, life is rather different. It's tough. You're facing new challenges and big questions about the future. know that there is a future ahead, because enjoying a meal together will always be one of life's great pleasures. We may be more distant from each other and our guests, and hygiene and safety measures may become more prominent in our daily operations. But no matter what, this is still food service, and we love it. We're all in this together. We're here for you.
So just a little shout out to all my colleagues around the globe. And I would like to welcome to the stage our great panelists. So Chef Amanda Cohen, chef and owner of Dirt Candy and Lekka Burger in New York. And welcome again, Amanda, this week. And always welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Chef Ernest. He is the executive chef at the University of South California in the hospitality team. Hi, chef.
Good morning.
Well, it's a really good afternoon for me, but I'm not going to argue on that.
And good evening for some.
True that. And Leslie Ferrier, the VP HR for the Momofuku restaurant team. Hi, Leslie.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Amazing with us since the beginning of the journey. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, your operations? You're coming from such different segments before I'm going to start with the interrogation. Amanda, do you want to reintroduce your restaurant and the importance of your people to you?
I am the chef owner of Dirt Candy in New York City. It's been open for about 11 years. I'm also the owner or part owner of Lekka Burger, which is a vegan burger joint that I have in Tribeca, but it's only been open for 5 short months. And so I mean, obviously without employees, I have no business. And that became very clear to me a couple of years ago when I switched over to a no tipping model. I had been in a very small space and I opened a much bigger restaurant, and I was having a very hard time finding cooks. And it just became apparent that sort of the standard wage that we were paying our cooks wasn't enough for them to live in New York City. And I needed to figure out, this is a very short story, but I'm making a long story very short. I needed to find a way to pay them more. And I realized that, there was a chunk of money coming into the restaurant that I wasn't able to sort of divide equally amongst all my staff. It was really, the bulk of it was going to my servers. And I started looking into the whole tipping system. And I personally find tipping to be a heinous system. It's pretty racist, pretty sexist, and pretty just all around unfair. And so I decided to get rid of it. And through that, I've been able to pay all my employees a living wage. And it's the start of my journey into treating my employees better. Leslie,
I know we talked a little bit in the past about the amazing things you guys did around mental health as well. Can you introduce what you do and your take on things?
Sure. Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey. I'm Leslie Ferrier. I'm the VP of Human Resources for Momofuku. I think I'm the first vegetarian that Dave Chang ever hired. So he was really sad when he found out about that. But anyway, I'm responsible for all of our operations, and that includes a variety of restaurants in New York City, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Toronto, and Sydney, Australia. So before everything happened, we had a little over 1,000 employees. So I'm responsible for everything, which is benefits, hiring, everything related to the employment experience at Momofuku. Been there for almost 5 years with Dave.
Super. Chef Eric, you have many people working with you, and many people you need to feed on non-crisis day. Tell us a little bit about your operation and your take on treating your people.
So I'm Ernest. I'm basically the campus executive chef and senior associate director of culinary excellence. I also oversee supply chain and a number of other departments at the University of Southern California. We have about 1,000 employees in our department, and we oversee 43 eateries spread across 2 campuses. north of 40,000 meals a day and often north of 60,000 transactions a day. So we, obviously have big teams, big kitchens, and a lot of work to do. The cornerstone of what we do is our culinary development program, and I oversee all of the culinary development, all of the menus, chefs. We kind of look at it from a lateral perspective, meaning that how do I get in an employee from the Los Angeles area at an entry level and provide training and structure to bring them up to do my job, because I'm not going to live forever, unfortunately. And those job skills allow them to make a good living and to build a life as a chef and as a culinarian that that is beyond their wildest dreams. And that's really our expectation and our mission.
This is amazing. Amanda, I want to pick a little bit about what you brought up, because in the great piece you wrote for the New York Times 3 weeks in, I think it was, I think you were one of the first brave ones to really pour your heart in such an honest way. You talked about the fact that your team that has been furloughed managed to get the max of the unemployment because of their higher salary to begin with, given your non-tipping system. How did you build this structure, and what are your plans moving forward as we're hopefully reopen soon?
I've been working at the no tipping system for 5 years, and I will say that I am not perfect at it. I still haven't quite managed to balance it out so everybody is paid the same between the front and the back, but I'm getting closer every day. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of customer education, a lot of server education, both of those, to really get people to understand that, yes, my prices were higher, but ultimately you were paying the same thing anyways. It was just looking different on the bill. And it was going towards a really good thing, which is that my back of house is able to at least live in the city, or live, somewhat decently in the city. But it is, and I said this in the piece too, and I meant it, it's not enough. That what I did was not enough. And for all the pats on the back that I gave myself, I didn't give my employees enough of a buffer. They didn't have enough savings. So thank goodness the federal government has come through and there is the stimulus package. So they are getting a lot of unemployed insurance benefits. But without that, I don't know. I don't know what anybody would have done. I don't know what I would have done. I didn't pay myself enough. The restaurant industry really exists through mostly our own fault on very, very slim margins. And there wasn't a buffer for any of us to weather what just isn't a storm also is this sort of massive catastrophe. And I don't know any business that could weather something that is now going on for close to 3 months. And what I'm going to do, I'm still struggling. New York is probably going to be one of the last places to open. So I kind of get to see what everybody else is doing and take the good and the bad from it. My ultimate goal, and probably not within the first couple of months because it's hard to, fix the house if it's on fire, is to really redo my restaurant and redo how I look at it. And I promised myself this, and I promised my core staff that we would ultimately not reopen the same restaurant we closed, and that everybody would get paid more. And if the restaurant couldn't make more money, then it was not a viable business, and that we wouldn't stay open. It's not worth it to me to go through this again, and if this should happen again and, have to put 35 people on unemployment again.
This is, I think it's harsh and it's really painful to hear. As you know, I've eaten in your restaurant when it was teensy place, and then again when it was bigger. But this is the reality chefs, look at across the globe. I want to take the conversation a little bit out of the now, because I think we're entrenched in the now, but looking forward and try to look in a positive way of what a resilient kitchen may look to you coming out of this, now that maybe there is more talent out there, maybe rents of locations will go down. How do we build a resilient team to really implement a resilient, sustainable environment and industry? Leslie, I don't know if
I think from Momofuku's perspective, I was actually on a 2-hour call this morning on this, and I think it's really looking at different revenue streams and being a resilient organization where you're not just relying on one thing to be successful or one revenue stream, because we were all caught in this where it was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And the only thing that was there was takeout, and takeout was not viable in the beginning to us anyway, because it wasn't safe. It still wasn't safe. So we're looking at a variety of different streams to keep funds coming into the company to keep us viable and resilient. And we've also, from an employee perspective, we've really looked at our teams to say, okay, how can we support them during this time? You know, the unemployment is great, but we've looked at COBRA coverage and continuing their benefits and to pay for that, as well as we put in a 501c3 together for now during this crisis. But that's something that's also going to live beyond this, so that if anybody has a crisis, you know, an accident or a fire or something like that, they have something else they can rely on through Momofuku.
Amazing. Chef Eric, you know, in such a big organization, obviously you have benefits, right? It's part of the perks of working for a big organization, but how do you build a more resilient team, or what is important to you in building a resilient team moving forward?
Yeah, well, fortunately, USC is large enough that we were able to provide admin pay and a continuation of benefits. So we're really, really lucky on that. Yeah, we have to, you know, not only, you know, large organizations, but small, we have to completely rebuild business models. They've got to be sustainable, they've got to be safe, and most importantly, they've got to be scalable for the future. We've also have to find ways to build in more margin, even though there is a ceiling on what customers will pay. And we have to find ways to minimize labor with still keeping that quality. You know, we have white tablecloth fine dining restaurants on campus where, you know, the expectation in that arena is center cut, right? It's center cut of the fish, center cut of even the vegetable. And we've got to really change the landscape of everything that we use. I think using like high quality, high flavor proteins or animal-based proteins as a garnish is really good because you're still able to deliver a lot of flavor with vegetables. I think flips, right? Instead of you know, a big piece of cheesecake with strawberries, maybe it's this really amazing strawberries with like a warm cheesecake sauce or something like that. Because you know, and the cost and the labor on that would be a tenth of producing the traditional dish. We're just looking at that. You know, how do we rebuild not only what we do in the service, but also in the preparation of that service. You know, I saw an article on 11 Madison Park where they may not reopen because it would cost millions of dollars just to prep and staff up. And it's just shown us that we're in an aged business model where things aren't going to work going forward. You know, the one thing that we're really stressing is whatever the solution is, it has to be something that we can scale up for the future.
It's definitely challenging in a big organization as you shift the whole dining and you have to retrain your team for something totally new. Leslie, how do you deal with, you're the one who has locations all over. How is the organization tackles the different changes now in different states and different countries?
Well, it's interesting. Just a few hours ago, they announced in Vegas that they're opening up, and we just got notification that the restaurants are opening up next week. Yeah, so Vegas is opening, so I'm a little challenged by that. It's interesting how the different casinos have communicated with us. So we've got a variety of plans that we're working on, but then we're also working with the state, the city, the federal level to incorporate all of those different requirements. California is very different than Vegas. Vegas is different than New York. So we're basically taking one master plan and we're putting everything that we can possibly think of into that plan, and then we're tailoring it by city, state, according to the requirements. So that's a big part of it. And then the next part of it is, how do you train to all of these different requirements? So that's sort of the next thing, the next hoop that I'm jumping through with my team is, okay, how do we do this? Now it's everybody's opening in a different way. Vegas is next week. New York is opening up for takeout, pretty much. So it's very different. So I'm sad about that for the business, but I'm happy about that from the learning opportunity, because we're going to open up in Vegas. We're going to learn from a very large operation, apply that to ourselves, and then adapt that to each one of our plans. So we're looking at everything that we're doing as a learning opportunity and applying it quickly to the overall master plan. It's huge.
Yeah.
It's a reopening for all of these restaurants. We just got the Venetian opened in December, and then we closed it in March. Now it's a whole reopening again. So interesting.
Lots of ribbon cuttings.
Yeah. Let's have ribbons around your neck with a map.
Yes, there you go. So we're always thinking on your feet. Amanda, we had a question from the people who are listening, and the question is for Mary, of if you can please detail how your system works. Is it just a 20% increase to the menu that you incorporate in as a no tipping? And how do you, when you talked about educating your staff and customer, how do you go about it?
So it's not exactly a 20% increase. It's actually more of an increase, and it gets complicated, and there's all these formulas because you all of a sudden your revenue is much larger than it was, and so all your insurances go up. So all of a sudden, my insurance company was like, whoa, your business is doing really well. And I was like, no, it's really not. I have to pay all that money out. It's still because my payroll is so high now. So my limited liability insurance is higher. My payroll taxes are higher. All of it is much higher. So I would say, and it's complicated because the more I raise the prices to offset that, the more my insurance goes up. So you start to figure out where there's a sweet spot. I would say it's somewhere between 20 and 25% though. And not some dishes we raised because we knew that they seemed like they had more value, and other ones we were sort of left where they were and hope things would sort of work out in the end. And then in terms of education, so I've been doing this now for about 6 years without tipping. We don't have to do as much education anymore. People know that we're a no tipping restaurant. But when we opened, we basically sat down with every customer. We gave them a booklet. We were like, this is how we're running the restaurant. There was a whole sort of story in the menu. We were like, please ask us as many questions as possible. And then to be honest, for about the first year, every single interview I did was about no tipping, to the detriment and also to the positive side of the restaurant. I think the restaurant became much more known for having no tipping rather than what it actually is, a restaurant that serves vegetables. But it got our message out, and we've been sort of able to balance that in the last couple of years, so that the first thing people don't always ask me about is, what's it like to be a no tipping restaurant?
Yeah, I think it may be more challenging when you're not tipping restaurant in a tipping restaurant neighborhood. So people need to understand that.
Yeah, one of the things we were fortunate with is there wasn't another vegetable tasting restaurant next door whose prices looked a lot cheaper. So people didn't know what they were going to pay for us anyways.
They just need to come and eat. It's self-explanatory. Yeah. We have 7 minutes. So first of all, I want to tell the crowd that Leslie and Chef Eric will join me in a follow-up session with Q&A. Amanda is signing books. So, we won't have her in that session. But if I'm not getting to all the questions you have, just know that there is this opportunity. I wanted to ask the three of you, with Fair Kitchens, we really believe that taking care of the people in the kitchen, in front of house, is the core of being any good establishment, any good restaurant. And then, you can be a sustainable type of a restaurant if you're not establishing this sustainability also with your team. And this is a story, it brings authenticity to the story you bring to customers. What are you planning doing differently as we are reopening in this new era of post-COVID for your teams? Is there anything that you're going to be doing differently in the aftermath of that you didn't do before, or is it more training? How are you treating this pause in maybe rebuilding teams differently?
Well, with USC, part of our Project Restart is not only the PPE and the, fitting in with state and federal guidelines, but for us, we're really focused on training. And I think in the beginning, we can't train enough. And ultimately that will create more partners. And instead of looking at our staff as frontline staff, we can look at them more as partners. And when you have 1,000 partners, your business can't fail. So that's going to be really, really important. And then also, looking for those further touch points to build trust. You have employees now where they used to come to work and it was very safe. They would never think about getting sick. Now it's a whole nother arena where, we really need to build that dialogue to build trust and to get people to continue to come to work. Otherwise, we'll just get sick outs. We'll get people not showing up for work. We'll get people, high stress. So I think also with us, it's we're mission based. So our employees are part of the Trojan family, and we'll have to rebuild how we provide the best UC experience, and they'll be part of that dialogue.
Leslie?
I think we're looking at the company and looking at every single thing we do, and we can't do it the same way because it wasn't a sustainable model. So I know one of the things that we're talking about is really our operators, our general managers, and our executive chefs running their operations more independently of sort of a corporate oversight. And that might sound counterintuitive, but we're going to supply the training and sort of the backbone to do this. But we want our managers and our leadership making more of the decisions within their restaurants, so they own that space. It's their restaurant, with sort of guardrails incorporated, but to push them to manage more thoroughly than they have in the past with all this sort of headquarters oversight, because it's not a sustainable model. It just isn't. And Dave has been really trying to do that with chefs, up and coming chefs, to give them restaurants, to really cut their teeth on it, to try new things, to make those restaurants more their own. They're part of the Momofuku family, but they're their own child. They're their own person. So a variety of things we're doing differently.
It's funny because it's trickling down, and we're all saying the same thing, but at different levels. So to add on to Leslie, mine is to give my employees more of a voice. So it's all the same. Obviously, again, with framework, I'm still the boss. I still own it.
Guardrails, guardrails.
I'd like them to be more involved, and I'd like them to see it as, and I talk about this a lot. I want my employees to feel like professionals, and I'm giving them a space to grow and learn as employees. But I'd like them to have more say in that, and it's something we've tried to implement before, and this time I'm going to be a little bit stricter with. Which I want financial training for my employees. I want to be able to give them so much more information so they can make really informed decisions. For me, one of the there's nothing nice about this whole pandemic, but if I were to take a little nice side to it, it is a reset for the restaurant. And, the idea that I'm going to get the people who really want to come back to work. I need a much smaller staff. We can all be more involved in the hiring. We're not going to be that busy for a while, so we don't have to sort of take employees wherever we can take them and just try to get through the day. We can really focus on making this a better business, which will in turn, I think, make for a much better life for my employees.
Mm-hmm.
No, and I think once you do that, people hear about it. We live in such a small world, and we want diners at the end to vote with their dollars, right? Just like they want to go and eat at a place where everything was sourced right or grown right. We want people to go and eat in a place where people are first treated right. So, it all links together, and I love the things you bring to the table. As we have to wrap in one more minute, any last words of wisdom before they're kicking us off the virtual stage?
Talk to your people, communicate. I think it's really, really important that you talk to your teams. And I think that through all of this, communication has been key, whether it's on a meeting like this, or the computer, over email, a phone call, whatever it is. Talk to your teams, reach out to them, tell them you care, and take actions that really back that up.
I agree.
Ditto. So I want to thank you all. It's been amazing. It's a topic that is close to everybody's heart, and I don't think discussed enough. So hopefully we open some of those floodgates to other people in the conference. So thank you for joining us today. And Leslie and Chef Eric, I'll see you in, I guess, a minute or two. And if you want to hear more about For Kitchens, you can also stop by our booth. Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Einav, and our panelists, as well as Unilever Food Solutions, for sponsoring the session and bringing everyone together around this really important issue. If I may put a small plug in for our own series, we heard a lot about training and hearing from your team and sort of involving them in these conversations about rebuilding. Just a reminder that all of our resources for this virtual series are available online on our website. The broadcast for previous weeks are there, as well as we've got free registration for food service operators and those in the industry for future weeks. So if you want to be investing in your teams and bringing them into this conversation, I think it's a really great way to have them participate in something like this, where they can sort of get more personal buy-in into some of this plant-forward ethos, get some ideas, get some professional development, maybe make some additional context and have some great conversations. So again, thank you to Unilever Food Solutions and to Einav for bringing up this topic. A reminder, as Einav mentioned, that she'll be continuing the conversation and hosting Q&A with Leslie and Eric in session. So if you wanted to participate in that conversation, you can head over there. And Amanda Cohen will also be signing books in the upcoming virtual networking reception. So you can also go there to talk to her about her future. All right, we're going to take a final look at the poll results. But before we do that, a quick overview of the networking reception, which is very similar to our earlier networking break. Sorry, I'm going on the wrong slides here. The slides that you're seeing right now will show you where to find everything. The viewing discussion tables, one-on-one networking, sponsor booths, and book signings by Amanda Cohen and Rich Landau. We'll have links to purchase books in the booth, but you can still get a book plate signed even if you already have their book, or if you just want to pop in and say hello and ask Amanda or Richard a question. Don't forget that you're entered in a raffle every week when you participate, and if you attend and participate all 5 weeks, you've got a chance to win registration and travel to next year's conference in Napa. Lastly, we hope you'll let us know your thoughts and feedback on our virtual series through the evaluation survey, which you can access at this link and which you'll also get via email. Your feedback is so important to us as we continue to iterate our virtual series for future weeks and as we think about additional programming for in the coming future. Don't forget to join us next Wednesday for week 4 of the virtual series, when we will virtually travel through the plant-forward cuisines of Asia, as well as consider the challenges and opportunities of spreading the word on plant-forward. As always, you can find the full schedule at plantforwardkitchen.org, along with the previous week's webcasts, presentations, and recipes. Our Plant Forward by the Numbers document is available for download there, as well as tons of other resources. And now for a final look at our poll results. It looks like the majority of people are also still, they're saying that their primary objective in increasing plant-forward options on their menus is to increase choice for flexitarian customers. So that's really interesting. The second most popular, but not, or sorry, I should say that is the first choice by a landslide. The second most popular objective is to support planetary and public health imperatives, regardless of customer demand. So interesting, sort of an interesting dichotomy there. All right, thank you so much for participating, and we'll see you same time, same place next week.